Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight, I have from the great Midwest, RDV, who's away, AFK for the moment. We have some technical issues we're trying to work out. We're going to be talking about a great film, one of the better ones of all time, if you think about it, and that would be Out of the Past, starring Robert Mitchum, Judy Greer, and a few others. Actually, it's got several people, if you're into classic movies, that you would recognize, including the elder Douglas, as it were, who does a great job in here. This is a movie from, I think, 47 that's about a man who starts off in a beautifully shot landscape by a river with a woman. You could tell he's older and mature and they want to settle down, but his past literally catches up to him at the gas station and almost kind of haunts him because the big man he used to work for calls him back to say, "I've got a job for you." And this is kind of interesting. What's really awesome about this movie are a couple key things. One, the way it's shot, beautiful film in black and white. Like I say, it's noir, so it's got all these nice black and white compositions. Night of the Hunter, we had talked about recently, starring Robert Mitchum, is tremendous as well. That one might be in some certain shots, peak arrangement better than this film, but start to finish, this is very atmospheric, very moody. Basically, if you're like me and you love the 80s movie Against All Odds, which I've had a soft spot for, that's a remake of this film. That's the more modernized version of it. And in here, it's interesting because with Robert Mitchum, he is so effortlessly smooth with his delivery, his timing, and everything. You go, man, this guy's really, really good. He's just not a Philip Marlowe half drunk guy that's just getting through collecting a paycheck. You really are buying what Robert Mitchum's selling here, and it's tremendous. The script is very quick. It's got a lot of fantastic dialogue and lines in here that you would expect in a film like this. I saw it, I think, at a festival probably back in the 80s as a teenager. Don't remember much about it. Rewatching it today, I was stunned by how fantastic it is because it's not one that you necessarily see that's readily available on TV. You always get the Ten Commandments or the Oscar winner movies and some big ones too. But my God, if you're any sort of film fan at all and you want to see something artistic, you want to see Out of the Past. I'm checking right now with RDV Jump coming in with some technical issues.
No, you just went live without me.
No, sir, you weren't there and you weren't available. So now you're here. I'm glad that you are. I'm glad to see that you are. So, what's your initial take on this film?
It's a great film. Kind of
First
sad
watch, correct?
yeah, first watch. I'm glad. I'm kind of sad that Eric couldn't join us. He chose football over us instead.
Yeah, well, Washington Dallas is going on right now, and that's one of the two games. If you're Redskins fans like myself, I understand it, but he has other commitments. He's one that likes to join us with these special movies because you're right, it is that kind of a film.
This is a movie that makes me just not want to trust names. Wow.
They're all evil in this film. Kind of.
I mean, I watched this on the Internet Archive.
Yes.
So between Jane Greer and I think the other one is the main. What's her name? There's just Katie, Jane Greer's Katie, and then Virginia Houston. And I'm thinking he should have just left Jane Greer and just
he didn't learn his lesson, did he?
Yeah. Well, yeah. She was a two-timing floozy. The great thing about this movie, more than that, is the fact that this is Kirk Douglas's third film.
Was he not good in this?
Oh, he was great in this.
Did you feel like he was evil, or did you just feel like he's a supremely confident guy you better not cross?
He's just the rich kind of, not the mob guy, but he's basically the guy is like, it's like, hey, I need your help with this. You're the best, and he's going to do whatever he can to get you to do it. And, and of course, Jane Greer, I guess, was his on and off girlfriend. She tried escaping from him in the flashback, and then she ends up going back to him because she's out of fear. But I think she's just a gold digger.
Yep.
I think that's all it is. She's playing head games wherever she can. Dude, Robert Mitchum had it made. He had a brand new girlfriend. He had to work at the gas station. The main guy I didn't like in this was the jealous boyfriend, or I guess wannabe boyfriend, the best friend at the end.
Oh yeah.
The yuppie. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Who confronts him. But Kirk Douglas was a pretty good character. It kind of gives you kind of like for those who play the game Mass Effect, he's kind of like the elusive man. You couldn't tell if he could. There's this was really, which ironically was played by Martin Sheen. Kind of similar role. You couldn't trust him or not. Is this guy telling you the truth, or is he leading you on? It's up to you to make your own decision, decide who's telling the truth in this. So I And then you got Rhonda Fleming here playing Meta Carson, who's working with what's his name, the Eels guy.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's just like, who do you trust in this? And everybody's all out of themselves. And yeah, and I agree with Eric. The fact that that Kirk Douglas, was a believable threat. You know,
He
you
doesn't
know,
have to resort to shouting, to yelling,
no,
to
no,
screaming, to losing his composition or anything like that. That's what I meant by him of being the man. He's like a kingpin, maybe he's shadowy, whatever you want to call it, but you don't go, oh, he's just some punk guy. In our review of Tulsa King, we talked about how once the guy killed his father to become the Don of the family and took the hairpiece off, you're like, hey, this guy's now the man, and he felt like it. Hold it, because he seemed like a wuss at first.
yeah.
No way that you get this vibe in this film. This guy's the man, and you better not cross him, and you just don't know if he's professional enough to trust. That's the one thing that you get early on.
The other standout role in here was Dickie Moore's character, the kid. He's he's
The
deaf.
deaf kid.
Yeah, and it's just all through the whole movie. I'm thinking like, okay, what's role is this kid gonna play in this? And you see him at the end of the movie, kind of like, he kind of like, she goes up and because Anne wants to be, it's like, hey, was he gonna run away with her and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And he's pretty much, he lies and says, yeah, he's going to, when actually he wasn't.
Right.
Yeah, he was. It is, like I said, this is one of those movies that teaches you lessons, man. Make your decisions lightly. Don't and I can't. But see, I can't. I have to point out that Robert Mitchum's character, Jeff, was an idiot. He was falling into her, basically Jane Greer's seduction, even though he said, "Oh, yo, I can't trust you," even towards the end. But he's still, part of him loved her.
One of the things with films back in the day is they obviously
Richard
had to
Douglas.
write a certain way when it came to sexuality, to be honest. And so I think a lot of it's in the verbal exchanges, but the scene there where he first meets her and the line preceding it, that's really great, because there's a lot of great lines in here when Kirk Douglas basically says, well, when you see her, you'll understand why. And he's sitting there, and he smartly, we get to see him in action, just kind of drinking booze, waiting for her to show up. And when she does, it hits him like a hammer. And it's kind of almost funny in a way, because you think of really stupid examples, like say in Dumb and Dumber, where he meets what's her face, delivering the luggage and all that, where his heart goes crazy. But here, when Robert's got the voiceover work going on, and he meets her, she looks so great in that dress. It's feminine, but it's not completely sexy. It's not trashy. It's not hideous. She's just a beautiful looking woman, and it hits you too. You go, the simplicity of filming something like this in black and white, where you can just focus not on her ass or some physical aspect, but her face, and just her as a woman as she walks in and he sees her, and you go, that's exactly what we were told by Kirk Douglas, and now we're getting it from him, and we understand it. And especially, like, he knows he shouldn't be falling for her, but I have to say this, she did so good early on, making you believe that, yeah, she was scared and she ran off, but that she was interested in him. And it wasn't until she shoots the guy and then runs off, and he finds the book saying, yeah, I did, to steal the 40,000. You're like, damn it, she did it. She did a very convincing job of it. What a wonderful role. I mean, it was just beautiful, because you're right. He should have known, and he didn't, and he took a chance. And that's another line I think he says too, that, well, sometimes life and love are a lot alike. You have to go all the way to find out if it's really worth anything. And boy, he really did.
So the guy who plays like the jealous friend of Ann Miller, a Virginia Houston in her, it's that is Richard Webb.
Mm-hmm.
For those who might know Richard Webb, he was on Days of Our Lives as Mr. General Rawlings back in 1977 for an episode. But more importantly, he was Captain Midnight, which was a TV series I ran from the 1954 to 1956 for 40 episodes. So he did some other some noir stuff, so as I said, so he wasn't really. So like I said, his character was a very minor role in this, but he actually did some stuff. He was on the Mod Squad for an episode. He was on 3 episodes of Lassie, Daniel Boone, all the different. Yeah, he's basically become a TV show actor, which isn't that right? You get paid for that, pretty decently. But overall, yeah, I pretty much like. Thank you, Eric, for getting rid of the porn bots.
I'm reporting them as soon as they come up, man. I'm clicking away.
I know, but I get because
They probably originate in Acapulco.
yeah. Eric's got a wrench. He's finally used it once. Usually
Thank you, sir.
Mariah kicks all our stuff out.
Let me ask you this. We had covered a few weeks back, and we go through phases with especially older movies, but types and all that too. And we kind of keep it freeform a little bit. But when we had talked about Robert Mitchum and how he looks and how he acts, and for me, when I saw this film, I thought, man, what a ruggedly handsome kind of guy he was, and just like I say, effortless in his delivery. And I know we've only covered a couple of his films, and I've seen a lot of them. I've seen a lot of his Marlowe stuff and his older stuff before going back to his younger stuff. How do you think he compares to the way guys are in movies today in terms of being an actor? Like, how good do you think he is?
Mitchum or any of the
Mitchum.
guys. Pretty much all the guys here are I like him better than most of the stuff you see today. Uh, that being said, most of the stuff today is just MCU stuff. It's Marvel stuff. You really don't see anything like this kind of type movies where people get able to act. Closest coming to acting like this would be what's his name? The guy Charlton Heston, or Clint Eastwood. But I mean, or Cary Grant. We had all these guys from the
Old Hollywood.
yeah, all old Hollywood.
Yeah.
They're the ones that actually put the effort in. Were believable. Nowadays, everybody just relies on doing fantasy parts. Um, this is believable because man,
We can all relate to that story of a woman that goes back to a man for whatever reasons.
yeah,
And
you
then
can
wants to
yeah.
go run with you for certain reasons that aren't, they're legitimate to her perhaps, but when you
Yeah.
look at it, there's a sadness to it because when it starts off, we know that the guy that's chasing him down that used to be like his old partner or buddy in a way, when he treats the guy like an asshole because he flicks the match at him or like that and kind of dumps him or like that, and you're like, you're a jerk off. I want to see you die, and when he has to tell his new woman in his life his
Mhm.
backstory and this whole flashback, he seems so mature when he tells it. It's great. I love voiceover stuff. When it's done right, it's very effective to me.
That's true. Yes, I really like that. The fact they did a voiceover. I love when they do a narration. Sometimes they do in the comic books too when they did self narration. It just adds more to the story. It makes it better. But Robert Mitchum, yes, very manly. Uh, no nonsense. He's not afraid to color out on our bullshit. But the problem is that he's as much as manly he is,
He got sucked in.
you got sucked in, yeah, by it. Yeah.
Most guys have a story of a woman that they weren't able to, as the modern parlay would be, control your frame in the situation. Otherwise, she will, and then she gets bored and leaves you, and all that stupid stuff that's just repackaged nonsense. It's kind of a similar mentality. But what I liked about here was the fact that this movie is just, oh, he's supposed to find her and bring her back, which she does end up being back. But the movie pivots almost about halfway through, let's say, because now they're in the present time after the story's told. Because when he goes to see the boss again, it's almost like a repeat. So it's like, oh, this has already happened. He's had his boyish romance in a way with somebody young, even though he wasn't young. And now he should be mature about the situation. She comes in it again, no longer, pure or virtuous, whatever he thought she might have been. She's your classic femme fatale. But the fact that he now is involved in trying to help this guy out on a much bigger issue having to do with the guy's um, accountant dealing with the IRS and all that, you can almost not really pay attention to that stuff being important other than the fact that we get an opportunity to see, will he do it again? But everything that happened to him before that he one-on-one got involved in, it's now he's involved with other people on higher stakes, and the same shit happens to him again. Not only that with another woman, but the same woman also kind of wants to do it with him at the end because we find out because she shot the guy that later on there's a double cross and a double cross. It's almost really a triple cross in a way. And how does the movie end? I I would say this. I think that the ending is very done appropriately, smartly. Um, there's no happy endings like they always promise to quote a great Queens-like lyric, but I just looked at Mitchum and said the same thing as you.
Yeah.
Do most men learn their lessons when a woman burns them?
I mean, like I said, yeah, and when some people think they can change someone, And obviously, women aren't the only one who think they can change men. Sometimes men can think they can change women, and we all have that inner thing. It's like, you know what, when you're in a situation, you kind of lose it. You kind of like, you think you're doing it well, and you don't realize that you're actually being played. You're because and who's playing you? It's not the woman. It's you're playing yourself.
Exactly, and he knew it, and he tells us
Yeah.
that. And sometimes when a woman gets you in her radar, a member of the opposite sex, let's say, there's almost nothing you do when they turn on their charm. And I thought that's what she did a really good job,
Yeah.
especially in those times of not coming across as just being a complete trashy whore. And I'm gonna have sex with you, let's run
So,
off. But
so yeah.
when she shoots the guy, that's when he realizes, fuck, she got me. And he just doesn't learn, even though he's met somebody he cares for. And it seems like he does, but it's like, how does he play himself out of this entire situation? Because it's more complicated and the
Mhm.
stakes are even higher. That's the beauty of the second half. It doesn't slow down, it picks up.
Exactly. And I was looking up trivia on this earlier today, and I was just because I like looking up IMDb, see if there's any goofs or any stuff. But apparently, I didn't know this, but Robert Mitchum had basically told Robert Ebert a while back that he smoked so much on that when the camera was rolling and Kirk Douglas offered him a pack and asked cigarette, and Mitchum realized he'd be carried a cigarette into the scene, held up his fingers and applied smoking. His improvisation was basically saved the take, and they kept that in the movie.
Yeah.
So that was, yeah. So it wasn't even really meant to be. It was actually just, it was just so in that habit. The other thing is they talking about the goofs in this. The one major goof was Leonard Earl's apartment, which is it's supposed to be on 114th Street, Fulton Street.
Hmm.
But apparently today, it says it's supposed to be like would be part of a block and then occupied by the main branch of the San Francisco Public Library, which is now the Asian Art Museum.
Yep.
So they kind of messed up a little bit on that. But overall though, like one of my favorite quotes in here is when they're playing roulette, and this is Kathy and Jeff, and Jeff goes like, "Oh, that's not the way to win," and she's like, "Is there a way to win?" And he replies back, "There's a way. There's a way to lose more slowly."
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's the thing about these kind of films is
smooth,
that
smooth lines, man.
they're smooth lines, but they say so much more. And when you're younger watching it, it may not have that kind of meaning to you, but you can read more into it from life experience when you're older. And again, a lot of the innuendo that would go on through that kind of writing had to be in place because it's not like today where a woman just throws their clothes off and then they show a minute scene of them making love and you're like, okay, yeah, they're supposed to be an item now or whatever. You're supposed to feel everything else. You don't have to show the act for it to be effective. And I think for this movie, it does it really well. And she's got a certain look to her. And usually the femme fatale, typically in a lot of like say Marlowe type stories, it was always a blonde, platinum type blonde woman. And also here because of the black and white and the lighting and the way shots are framed. Um, Obviously you get that kind of contrast. Here she's dark haired. Even though the good girl is blonde haired here at the beginning, usually the blonde hair is the bad one. It's pretty obvious that there's certain shots in here that you go, okay, they're just showing off a little bit. Like when he there's a kind of not a chase sequence, but there's a I'm going to follow you and hey, go pull around the corner and pull up here. Taxi cab driver at night in San Francisco, where he goes into like an alleyway and it's completely dark and he's watching, and then his face is in the light. And the smoking thing is like a big deal in here that we've talked about. It's pretty cool, and they so aggressively like flick their cigarettes out and throw them everywhere. It's not that like you dump them. It's like you almost start getting hypnotized every time you see them smoking in a scene because they're fiends and they're going at it, and it's just visually it's a nice movie. I did say Night of the Hunter. I think some of those scenes in there artistically, those peak scenes were probably better than anything in this film. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I
Right.
think those are just outliers on how good they were. This consistently is very good, but it's not so much so where I think the movie gets away from the story and the characters involved, and sacrifices that stuff for the sake of having a great shot. I think that it's good enough the way it's shot that it adds to the film, which is what it's supposed to do. But I will say this: back in the '80s, and we've talked about this before on Tuesday nights when we do our mostly action stuff and other things from the '80s as we branch out and other things, that the '80s was the decade where they really, really tried going back to relaunch stuff. And I talk about like Leave It to
Mhm.
Beaver or other shows. And one of the things that comes immediately to mind is that really infuriated a lot of people with TBS and then later TNT, Turner channels. They would want to take an old film like this and colorize it. And it was such a big deal from the purists that I think they even said, well, maybe we won't do it on some of these, but we will on some others. And they just decided they want to do it. And the attitude is, hey, we're the ones that are making these movies being available for people to see, so we can do what the hell we want.
Yeah.
And whether you like it or not or agree with it, obviously options are different now 30, 40 years later. And the fact that these movies are still so good and people like us talk about them of different generations, I think is tremendous, because you can argue about it's dated or it looks like it's, 80 years old or whatever, 60 years old. No, it would be 80, right? 47. So what, 53, 73, 70 plus years old. It's still a damn good movie because it deals with what's important, people and life situations that you can relate to. You hit the nail on the head when you sit there and say you can totally understand it. You can't get away from it. That humanizes him. He's not a comic book character. We can relate to him, right?
Yeah.
I, However, I almost wish I could see this in a color version, because the background where they're filmed it, like in the Yosemite and the Sierra Nevadas and all that. Oh my God, it's so beautiful and gorgeous. So I just think the movie is very stunning. I think it's absolutely tremendous all the way around.
Yeah.
I have a hard time finding a bad thing to say about it.
So I really liked the exchange between Kirk Douglas and Robert Mitchum, and I'm really excited to see the next movie that they actually start ops each other, which was the Way West, where they are both the main lead roles. That's 1967. So at least 20 years later, those two actually were in a movie together.
Yeah.
I know Kirk Douglas was in I think it was Midway, or the Battle of Midway with John Wayne.
Midway, I believe. Yeah.
He was good in that movie. Better than John Wayne. Sorry, anybody likes John Wayne, but Kirk Douglas is a better actor to me. It depends. John Wayne is for Western. Kirk Douglas is pretty much for everything else. So yeah, first time watch for this, enjoyed it. When I was watching, I'm like, okay, I've seen the Bogart films now. And I'm like, I'm trying not to compare it to Bogart, but I mean, in the sense, I'm like, I'm like, oh, that would have been great to have Bogart in this too, I just feel like every noir film should have had Bogart in it. Just a great actor, and then playing off other actors is usually better than just a solo star being the best,
Right.
Because I like when you can actually be able to build up the other actor, and Mitchum does that well with Kirk Douglas in this.
I think Bogart's got more of an intense kind of delivery.
Stare. Yeah,
whereas Mitchum's just more, I don't know, it's just a more
Bogart.
Not subtle delivery. It's more of a sleepy kind of one,
I think Bogart, you hang on every word.
Yeah,
he delivers it, and then him, he's usually when with Lauren Bacall, who became his wife. There's the chemistry on the screen with that. Her playing the dame that that he can't trust, especially in Dark Passage.
Mm-hmm.
It was awesome. Exchange between those two, but Robert Mitchum he's got that kind of like that charisma, kind of like that pretty boy look. He doesn't look all mean and mangled like what's Humphrey Bogart does. I think Robert, because whenever I watch Robert Mitchum, he kind of reminds me of like Cary Grant a little bit.
Cary is more, I think, of an elegant type approach. Cary, I think, does really well in certain roles, but I don't think Cary Grant would pull this off at all.
No. But I'm saying, as far as not personality wise, but more of that, like he's got that tall, pretty boy look going on. He doesn't look like he's a mean mugger, and that's what I always think. I think of Cary Grant. Same thing. He's that tall, elegant guy. And when I see Robert Mitchum, especially in this one, maybe because he's a little younger, but yeah, he didn't come off as imposing. He came out. He is a man. He does do manly characteristics in there. He does this, but he's still not, like you said, like when it comes to like Bogart or Charlton Heston. He's kind of like, he's got less testosterone, but he's still a man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's the way it's presented is totally different. And again, it's about the characters. Put them in a situation that you can relate to, even if you haven't been to Acapulco, or you don't work for a mafia type boss, a gambling guy. It's just, these movies are very watchable and they're very relatable. And I think the older you can get more of a taste for them. And that's why,
I,
we encourage people
yeah,
to do that, because we just don't cover all the
yeah.
latest greatest hits that are out there, right? I
I,
mean, we
I,
went from
I
Megan
just
before this to this.
dude, this whole movie, I'm like, just kill Catherine, kill her, kill the bitch. That's like the whole movie. I was like, just get rid of her.
Does she make you mad?
Oh man, she was so annoying. I was like, dude, like you had the perfect girl. Yeah, you went back because your past caught up to you, and I would have been like, dude, I'm done with this. You know, it. Yeah, she is just one of those crazy girls. Like, if I can't have you, no one can. But then she shoots him at the end anyway, and then
I
she
know.
gets.
I didn't want to give the ending away when they're driving away,
Oh,
because
it's
he knew what was going to happen. That's why he tipped everybody off. And then that happens, and then you're like, oh, he's not going to make it,
no.
because you want to root for him, right?
Oh yeah, I was thinking like, oh, that'd be great. He gets a happy ending. No, this is noir. Not everybody gets a happy ending. It's more like a bittersweet, kind of like Casablanca. You think he's gonna get the girl? Doesn't get the girl.
And it's not, so there's a difference between a lot of movies today that we've talked about. We mentioned this with last year's films. Again, we went live earlier before this to talk a little bit about Megan, and we just said it was I almost compared it to Top Gun in the sense that give the audience what they want, be respectful in doing it. You don't have to make a thought-provoking film, just make a solid one. And maybe it's the Howard Hawks model we had talked about with Rio Bravo or whatever that film was that we did, where the idea is that don't have any bad scenes, make it flow, edit it well, have maybe a couple good ones that people remember. And you get that in here, you got that in Megan. Give people what they want. And when you focus on the characters a little bit, it almost doesn't matter how convoluted the plot gets, or if it's tricky, if you can't remember what's going on, or if it's told in a flashback sequence like this. But the thing is you and I talked about why Top Gun was so popular for one main reason, had nothing to do with Top Gun itself. It's the fact that the majority of things that are out there today are very grim, very dark. There's no happy endings or whatever. And that doesn't mean, like in here, you go, well, it's not really a happy ending if you see the ending, but you can go, well, it makes sense and it's not brutal. It's not, oh, the person dies. It's not like pissing off the audience like in The Walking Dead when they overdo it with bashing Glenn's head in season 4 or whatever it was, where you just go, that's too much. And you guys know it is, and you're doing it anyway. Fuck you. It's not go away heat, right?
No. Yeah.
The
Well,
ending was appropriate. He did not learn his lesson,
yeah.
so he paid the ultimate price.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those moral stories, like like the fables, as you say, the grim fairy tales.
Hmm.
If you do something and you don't learn from it, you're doomed to pay the consequences. It's just, like I said, dames. I tell you, dames. And
Well,
ain't no good for you, Sonny.
one of the things I wanted to bring up with you about this film that I think is important to kind of touch upon here as we get towards the close of this review is that, the Extreme Movie Show, we always like to say we're 80s based because that was my decade of growing up, and you're a decade behind me. So we have a little bit of a gap, and it's nice that we can talk these differences and how things have changed. And, we've done the sci-fi and the horror, and we've experimented with some TV shows and all that. So it's pretty cool with the different things that we want to approach. But, we try to, as some of the people on Twitter this past week or so have noticed that, hey, we don't really want to talk about how bad something is or how woke it is or how much it sucks. We'll talk about what worked or what didn't and compare it to other things. But the number one thing I've definitely learned in the past couple years of us doing the Extreme Movie Show is this: the people that like these older films seem to be, regardless of whether you think they're good or past their prime or not relevant anymore, they're more passionate about those films than the majority of films that are out there today. And again, I don't really knock necessarily anybody for what they like or don't like. We have our tastes, and we can agree to disagree about the effectiveness of things or whatever. And if you're entertained, I think that's ultimately what it is. I
Mhm.
just find that a lot of movies today don't make you sit there and have the kind of
It's
conversations we're having about something that for you,
well,
being a younger man on a first watch, is seeing a movie that's over 70 years old.
and I
It's
can see
incredible.
I could argue the same thing as far as this comes over any media. Look at comic books. Nowadays, they've changed stuff so much to the point where majority of people who are older and then people who are younger like myself, going back and I'm reading the older stuff and I'm enjoying it more because it was just made better. It wasn't no agenda. Like I said, it's the point you can just appreciate it, and it's not just a story, but the directing, the locations, how they did everything. Today, everything's CG in movies, man.
Hmm.
You look at that. It's the point where it's become a joke. Like nobody's creative anymore. Everybody's copies the other. Everything's reboots. Uh, that being said, there was some, in the early 50s, there probably was some reboots, maybe some 40s, but like I look at Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that had like 4 or 5 reboots.
We've covered a couple of the
Yeah,
films. I
yeah,
still
yeah,
say the original is done very well.
yeah, yeah. But like I said, like I like watching older stuff. Um, Sometimes I get bored by it because it's just not my cup of tea or whatever. But I think when something is really done like well this, it should be talked about. And I'm glad that this is on the Internet Archive.
Yeah, that's
That's
where you
right.
saw it, which is good.
Yeah,
Obviously, this is a movie that will play on other places, whether it's Turner
yeah.
Classic or whatever pay you have. If you're
And
overseas, I'm sure you could still find it
it's
fairly available. It is that good of a film and considered one of
yeah,
the best in this particular area.
and it's also it was filmed in 1947.
Yep.
Even though it has a publication date of 1951, but they started filming in 1947. Just seeing everything, just the way that how the kid in here, he's working on the tires, putting the rim on, putting the rim tire on the rim,
Hmm.
just like all the old stuff, simple stuff of this. People work at gas stations. That's what you worked at. You get paid well. You were full service.
And the few scenes too that we see of his young girlfriend, that she lives basically kind of not on a farm but in a farmhouse a little bit, and you're seeing
Mhm.
that transition of farm life to city life or the outskirts of town like this would be.
Yep.
So it's interesting sometimes these older films when they do take the time to film at natural locations like they did here. Makes you go, wow, that was part of America that we don't really get to see now. I mean, a lot of the shots we do get to see are awesome and breathtaking, but sometimes when you shoot it this way, you almost feel like you're there, not only because of the aspect ratio and the type of shots needed for it, but just because of the way they'd want to introduce what it was like at that time. Because the directors then are going, well, how are we going to show this town? How are we going to let the audience members see it? And it's interesting to see it through the eyes of somebody that was directing, that was probably 40, 50 years old at the time. It's great. And I'll close with this. I've always joked about how much the 80s was a very interesting decade and fun decade, and then the fun kind of started going away pretty, like a lot of things, like bankruptcy or like a divorce,
Mhm.
pretty gradually, but then very quickly at the end, because Phil Collins, you could not stop in the 80s. And against all odds, I just loved it. And I didn't really care too much about the plot. As a kid, I was just like, okay, bad guys, James Wood, who's great in it. Football player gets hired to go find the girlfriend, but instead of bringing her back, they're doing it all over the sand and then the temples and all that. That's kind of hot. It's kind of erotic in a way. That was a remake of this film. So it's that powerful that even 40 years later, people said, hey, we're gonna do a remake. And again, you go back to that, well, at least honor the source material, try to be somewhat modernizing of it. And I think Against All Odds is a sequel, not really a sequel, but a remake.
Well, in the
Kind
remake,
of had the right spirit a little
yes,
bit.
with Jane Greer as the mother
Yes,
of the original
exactly.
of her original character.
Right.
So that was cool that she actually came back for that. She was that was that's another thing I always talk about Eric about this. Whenever we do a movie from the 40s or even from the 50s, even the kid's dead.
Yeah,
It's like you look at today's actors, like
that's
they
true.
passed away. I
That's
was
true.
thinking, I think the only person that's still child actor still alive is the kid from Holiday Affair.
I thought the elder Douglas was still alive. I think he's like 99 or something, or
Well,
100.
Kirk
Seriously.
Douglas, I think he passed away. I think didn't he?
He may have. I don't know. I don't really keep up on that stuff, but
Yeah,
I know Tony Bennett's almost 100, and he just sang a few years ago and sounded pretty good. Shatner's in his
yeah,
90s. It's pretty amazing. But as a kid, seeing a lot of these older guys that I would see,
yeah,
from my parents watching films and all that, seeing them like on Carson and late night shows, I still clearly remember Mitchum as an older
yeah.
gentleman. Thought he was very
Kirk,
intelligent. He absolutely comes across that way. He's Robert Mitchum, just like Humphrey Bogart's Humphrey Bogart. That's what
yeah,
we want. Give
yeah.
us more of that.
So Kirk died in 2020, 103 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
This stubborn old man will go.
My final thoughts:
Awesome.
great film. Put it on your list of films to see before you die, or wherever the hell you title it, because that's a very boring title to me. But if you like listening to this or
Nice.
you're curious, check it out. It's that damn good. It's really worth it. I think Night of the Hunter's got some better technical aspects to it, but in the long run, I felt this movie a lot more, and I enjoyed it more because of that. And that's not a knock on that film because that's a great film as well, but that's more of a brainiac kind of film to me. This one's more of an emotional type one. I loved it a lot. I thought it's tremendous to
This
go
is
see it.
also our first Kirk Douglas review, I believe.
It may be, even though we didn't really focus on him that much, other than
No,
to mention that
no.
he was great in it. Yeah, yeah, we do venture off into other areas, that's for sure. And so we felt pretty strongly about doing another Mitchum one. And damn it, here you go. What a friggin' home run, Megan, Dark Shadows, and this one to start the year off. That's what we call the perfect trifecta, a turkey, if you will. Hitting I don't know what the baseball term is, Eric, hitting the cycle, if you want to call it that.
A
Damn
Grand
good stuff
Slam?
too. Yeah, not the grand slam, but the cycle. There's a difference. So yeah. All right, any other final thoughts?
No, I just kind of sad that Pixel didn't get a chance to watch this. Apparently, it was a goof up. He didn't realize that this is what we picked, so that's why he didn't join us tonight. What a shame. I scolded him behind stage, and I told him to go watch it while we're doing this.
Yeah, and things do happen with all of us too. So that those things happen. That's called life. But you know what the beautiful thing about it is because you've listened to the Extreme Movie Show, you know to go see this film, and even if you've seen it, you'll go see it again. Thanks, guys, for showing up. Thanks for taking a moment listening to us, so that the newer listeners and all that. Certainly appreciate that. Letting everybody know that we exist. Remember, if there's something you want us to give our extreme take on, let us know. We'll be more than happy to take a look at it, and through the eyes of two totally different people, and sometimes three when we have that young 20-something that didn't show up to now. Pixel may be pounding the eggnog again, but he's definitely not on that Go Mad diet, if you know what I'm saying, Eric Grin. Easy E. For RDV and everybody involved here at the Extreme Movie Show, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As always, stay extreme.
Later, guys.